So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for aACE Software's Discovery Track series. This is the second webinar in the series, and we will be covering purchase orders. Last week, we went over navigating aACE, the very basics of the interface, searching, sorting, and selectors. This week, we will build on those basics with purchase orders. First, we will introduce your hosts. My name is Ashley Harker, and I'm a project manager here at aACE. And joining us today is Michael Bethy, the founder and the president of aACE, is here to walk you through purchase orders. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Wow, putting me on the spot. This
Totally.
wasn't part of our rehearsal. I'm Michael Bethy, President and CEO of aACE Software. Very excited to be here and to be doing this. And I'll give you a little more context regarding that statement shortly.
Okay. So we have launched this new series of webinars that aligns with the aACE implementation discovery track. This is number 2 of 8 learning sessions in the series. These webinars will guide you through a foundational understanding of aACE. And though aACE has tons of features to leverage, this is going to walk you through the foundations and the core functionality. We will be offering webinars on more advanced topics, so keep your eye on the aACE website and sign up. And I will announce an exciting webinar coming up next week at the end of this session, so keep your ears out for that. A few more details: this webinar is being recorded, and after this meeting, we will send you a link so that you can download the recording. All participants are muted, but if you'd like to ask a question about what you are seeing, please do so at any time using the Q&A buttons at the bottom of your screen. And don't be shy. We really appreciate questions. Questions improve the webinar experience for us as presenters and for you. And also Michael is here as the highest aACE guru who can answer anything you throw at him. So you can challenge him with that. And with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to our presenter, Michael. You can share your screen and jump in.
Thank you,
Yes.
Ashley. All right. Okay, let me share my desktop. Okay, great. Can you see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. So, very excited to be doing these. This is the first webinar I've hosted in quite some time. I need to work on the lighting situation here, I think. But I think I kind of forgot how much I enjoy these. But as Ashley said, I do enjoy them more with questions and participation. I have a pretty healthy agenda to go through. I was reviewing it yesterday and this morning, and our previous webinars were an hour long, and the powers that be have told me that these need to be half an hour. So there's quite a bit that I'm going to move through pretty quickly. But we will be sending everyone the recording, as Ashley said, so you can slow down and watch them at your own pace afterwards. So I have a little bit of an agenda here. I want to introduce this. I want to introduce kind of where we are in the discovery process. So let me just pull up our page on our website. The discovery process really it begins with users learning about aACE, and then throughout the course of the process we learn a little bit more about your business. As Ashley mentioned, POs is the second webinar in our series. The first is obviously basics, what we did yesterday. The point of discussing POs first isn't so much to teach you how to write a PO. I mean, that's almost a side effect. Really what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach users how transactions work. Because as we said it during the last webinar, once you know how aACE thinks, it's very easy to use. You can apply that knowledge elsewhere. And so in this webinar, we want to teach you how transactions think. And we actually reinforce that during the next webinar. So this webinar is POs, where we're going to write a PO, and then we're going to enter an incoming shipment. We're going to receive the goods, and then we're going to enter the vendor's invoice. At our next webinar, we're going to write a sales order. That's someone else's, right? We're receiving a PO in that case. We're going to ship the goods. So our outgoing shipment is their incoming shipment. We're going to send them an invoice, right? That would be their purchase. So the payables side of the system and the receivable side of the system, they're mirrors of one another. They're opposite sides of the same coin. So this webinar works hand in hand with the next webinar. And the goal is, again, just to teach you how transactions work and how AACE thinks, because you really can't take that knowledge and apply it elsewhere. I do want to just quickly review the agenda. So we're going to go through writing and delivering a purchase order. We have a handful of topics to review there. We're going to go through receiving a purchase order. We're going to take a look at the PO at a midpoint after we've received, before we've entered the vendor's bill. We're going to then enter the vendor's invoice. We're going to go back and take a look at the PO. And then, time permitting, we might talk about what we would do with that vendor's bill. That's more for an accounting or an AP webinar, but it reinforces some of our status logic, which is an important aspect of this webinar. So time permitting, we'll jump into that. So that's our agenda. A little bit of a disclaimer, this is pre-release software. So it's expected that we'll find something unexpected. That makes sense. I think next week we may be using pre-release software, I'm not sure. But the official announcement of aACE6's launch should be going out within hours, not within days. So we're obviously very excited about that. So with that said, I've got 22 more minutes. Let's jump into things. And I don't have the Q&A dialogue open, Ashley and Aaron. So if we do get a question, I'll try to insert pauses along the way. Just let me know.
We'll keep an eye on it.
Sounds
All
great.
right, so I'm going to open up the purchase orders module. As we learned last week, it defaults to POs that were assigned to. I'm going to go ahead and create a new PO. I can press the new button, or I can use my Command N hotkey. This is for Granger. Okay. I'm going to go here and let's just enter a few things. I'm going to blaze through data entry because we talked about that last week. Let me just use type ahead here for some cable. Let's get 10 of these, 5 of these, and 7 of these. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. I'm going to stop and we're going to talk about what's happening here. So this PO, let me make sure I'm staying on my agenda here. Okay. What aACE did is it prompts me to open the PO. Okay, when I hit save on a pending record, this is a pending record, it has that yellow color. aACE validates it. You know, is this PO valid? Does it have all the required fields? Is the date, does the date belong to an open accounting period? Things like that. If this transaction is valid, aACE prompts me to open the record. So after you've been using aACE for just a little while, you'll hit save. And if you don't get the prompt, you'll say, well, what's wrong? At that point, you can manually trigger the open process and aACE will give you a specific list of errors. But you know that you can do that safely because it didn't prompt you. With that said, for both purchase orders and sales orders, whether it prompts you is a preference, because we do have some customers where writing a PO is kind of a science project for them, or they want to do it over the course of a week in order to achieve free freight, and then they're looking for things, you name it. So you can turn this feature off if you're worried that your users are going to click that enter key kind of habitually. But generally speaking, as far as aACE is concerned, throughout the system, you hit the save button on a pending record, validates the data. If it's valid, it prompts you to move the record to the next step. I'm actually going to say not yet right now, so that we can compare a pending record, certain things about a pending record with certain things, the same set of things for an open record. All right. So this is a pending record. What does pending mean? Pending means it's essentially in a draft state. So next week, we're going to review a pending sales order. That would print out as a quote or an estimate or a proposal, whatever your preferred term is, right? Well, with a pending record, you can do anything you want to it. You can, assuming you're a member of a user group that has the privileges, you can edit it, you can delete it, like erase it permanently from the system. You can do anything you want. You're writing it. Some systems don't give you a pending status. You have to enter a record, and then the minute you hit save, it's committed. We find that, and our users would kill us if that's the way AACE worked. So the ability to have a pending record that you can work on over time is actually, a really, really nice feature that not every system supports. But since a purchase order is a contract with a supplier, and this is pending, we want to prevent users from sending this PO to this vendor. We don't want someone to send this to Grainger because while it's pending, because someone could come in and do anything they want to it subsequently. And then obviously you could end up with a situation where you've got your record here and then they've got a printout here and they don't jive. So if I try to print this as a pending PO, I get this watermark. This PO is not final, do not process. If you send this to a vendor and they send you the stuff, congratulations, you got a lot of free stuff.
Michael, is there a way for end users to send a pending PO if that's just part of their company process and protocols?
You can deliver a pending PO exactly the way I'm going to show you with an open PO. And in fact, that watermark is a preference. So if a customer has a workflow where you send pending POs, maybe because you're in the world of commodities and you have no idea what you're actually going to get. You're like, the process is you send the supplier the PO, and then they kind of come back and tell you what they can provide, and then you edit it, and then you open it. Like if that's your workflow, I see Erin, shaking her head. The system does support that. I would encourage people to leave that watermark on. You're still communicating
For free
but
stuff.
maybe not. Maybe if you're in a hot commodities industry, they get it, they can provide it. Just do it. Just tell us, right? Because we need to grab those goods. So AACE is really quite flexible in those regards. So that was a good question. So I showed that. Let me these are for inventoried items down here in the admin gear. This is for administrators only. I can jump to related inventory transactions. Note that there are none for this pending record. I'm also going to go in and edit this PO. I'm going to change the 7 to 8. Okay. If we look at our log, there's nothing in there aside from the creation of the record, but that edit was not logged. So you notice that AACE prompted me again to open it. If I select not yet and I want to open it at a later date, I can go up to actions, which I'm going to do shortly, and select open PO. So let me go ahead and do that. And then let's take a look at all of those same things. Okay, open. Opening the PO is what makes it real. Usually that corresponds with the delivery of the PO to the supplier, right? If I print this now, that watermark is gone. This is considered a real PO. If I use our little handy administrator tool down here to view related inventory transactions, we can see that this put on order values, balance values, into these particular products, right? So now the system expects that we're going to get those goods. And then let me go in and do what I said before, or do exactly what I did before. Let's edit a few of these lines. Now, I should point out that whether someone can edit an open PO is subject to a specific access privilege, right? If opening corresponds with delivering, then you are going to really want to control who could edit the PO subsequently, because there may be communication requirements with the vendor. You may have to send them a new document. If you say to me, well, revisions are common for us in our industry, this is a little bit wild and woolly, we have a process for creating revisions where you can keep an audit trail of every single iteration of a PO, and what you'll get is the same PO number with little r. So pretty cool stuff. But let's go ahead and look at the logs now, and you'll see that those same edits that didn't log a thing while the PO was pending, right, are now reflected in the log. The log is everyone's favorite friend. It is. I joke. We need to, I see Ashley smiling. Repeat my joke. It's a good joke. It's not even really a joke. But what I say in demos often is that people spend 3 hours a day following up, 3 hours a day being followed up on, and then they do real work with the rest of the time. It's kind of a joke, but it's also kind of true. So the logging and some of what you're going to see next, it's all designed to decrease follow-up. Your need to follow up with others and other people's needs to follow up with you. And frankly, your own needs to follow up with yourself. We're going to see that in a second. Okay, so let's, we open this PO, let's deliver it. I'm just going to go up here and say email purchase order. Popped up on my other screen. Here it is. Hi, Emily. Here's the PO we just discussed. Thanks again. Best. All right. So this is to our customer. You'll notice it's BCCing a system address. We have a feature highlight on our email integration, but this combined with this does some pretty cool stuff. We're going to come back to that.
Is this the Big Brother edition or?
We'll talk about, that's a reference to logging. We'll come back to logging. So I have learned that I want to confirm receipt of POs. So I'm going to say, sent the PO to ET, Emily Townsend. We'll follow up in a few days. You have some suppliers who lose things, right? So I'm going to go ahead and assign a follow-up. Comment means it's like an internal note. Activity means that this sentence, this comment that I entered, will also appear on the vendor's record. So usually you want to use activity when we actually had some interaction with the customer or the vendor. So in this case, could go either way, but I'm going to go ahead and just submit it as a comment. The best example of that is like following up on a past due invoice. You're going to want to submit that as an activity so that the salesperson who's in communication with that customer can see that, oh, so-and-so followed up with you about the invoice the other day. That person doesn't need to talk to the AR person. That's present in their view. So that activity button is pretty cool. And we talk about that in a few other webinars. So here I established a next step and a next step date, 3/13. On the 13th, aACE is going to send me a follow-up notice. We did this a few days ago with a PO. And so this morning, actually, and I don't know who created this PO or who did this. Good job, Aaron. But the system sent me a follow-up notice. I'm supposed to follow up on this PO. So I can click and here I am, right? So I'm going to say I went ahead and followed up on that PO, and I'm going to mark my notice as complete for everybody. Denise doesn't need to do that since I did that. All right, so let's take a look at the management view real quick. We entered our PO, we delivered it, we're good to go. We scheduled the follow-up. That's typically the workflow. Now, writing a PO, writing a PO manually, we don't want our customers to have to do that. We want the system auto-generating POs. So keep that in mind. But you are going to at some point need to write a PO manually, and that's an example of how to do that. The rest of the tools, though, delivering the follow-ups, et cetera, edits, they're applicable in all cases. Data entry is not usually where you have problems. Usually where you have problems is in the follow-up and the follow-through, right? I can enter a PO in Excel, print it out, email it out. That's not really where most of the value is. Some value for sure, but usually where things fall through the cracks after that. The management view in both purchase orders and sales orders just gives you perspective into what was ordered, how many have we received, In this case, we haven't received anything. And then how many have we purchased, right? How many have we entered an invoice from a vendor for? Right now, 0. If we've paid deposits, we'll see the deposit balance, things of that sort. So in my little agenda, you saw me saying that we'll come back and look at this PO in a midpoint state. We're going to be looking at this view so that we can see this view get filled out. So I'm going to go ahead and psychologically, I'm going to log out of being the person who writes POs, whoever that is in your organization. So I want you to log out of that role too. And now we're going to fast forward in our minds a few days, hopefully a few days, maybe a few weeks. And we're going to be the person in the warehouse who's now receiving this shipment, right? So it's a different person. Their little world, their list, right, is the shipping log module. The shipping log module supports both incoming and outgoing shipments. I'm going to select new, incoming. And I'm going to select Grainger. Tab out.
So the workflow here, Michael, would be that Grainger or UPS shows up with your order and your warehouse person grabs the packing list and enters the vendor. Is that correct?
Well,
I know it can be unique for every business.
Well, the reason I'm hesitating, this is true for a lot of aACE, we don't actually intend for anyone to use what people are saying. We have a receiving app.
Right.
So it's a mobile device for the people in the warehouse. They can scan things. They can walk into a semi truck. I mean, there are some industries where you need to count it before it's unloaded for insurance reasons, or maybe things are just heavy or whatever the case may be, or maybe there's a trust issue in the industry, right? The minute they take it out of the truck, you could have lost it. So we don't actually intend for anyone to use this interface, but it's important in this webinar for people to see how everything connects.
Right. But if they're perhaps a customer wasn't using a receiving app, this is still a...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I selected Grainger. What it did is it auto-built what we might be expecting from Grainger. I can tell based on the IDs, this is the PO that we entered this morning. And I'm just going to go ahead and move these quantities over. These are the goods that we've received. There are lots of little tools in this workflow, right, to make that handier. Let's see. I thought we had tooltips. Maybe we do. But we've got, little tools all around. But just to receive these items, I'm going to go ahead and receive them in full for this webinar. It's as simple as clicking these buttons. If we had a partial receipt, I could click into this field and enter 9, for example. So let me go ahead and hit save. You'll notice that the status is pending. The color is yellow. Oh, I didn't get a prompt. So let's see what. Items 1 through 9, getting an office. So we need to, there's our something unexpected. We need to account for that. These guys are 0 value items, so they should not be getting validated. So can you note that, Erin?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and hit save. Notice the pending status. aACE validated the record. So you guys, actually, that was a great example of what happens in the real world. I hit save. I didn't get the prompt. What's wrong? I can manually prompt the process, and it's going to give me a very specific instruction regarding what needs to be fixed. We have put a lot of work into those instructions, including suggestions about what someone might be trying to do. Like if you're overpaying a purchase, and it could, gives you ways that you might be able to do that if you really had to. So we're all users of software. Drives me nuts when I'm trying to do something and I get error 60,000, error 60,001, kernel destroyed, just something. It makes no sense to me. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? we've really tried to make the error messages in aACE very user-friendly. So I went ahead and I marked this as received. That's my job as a warehouse person in this demo today. Receive the goods, right? So again, we're going to psychologically log out of that particular role. What aACE did, should see this in a minute. Let's see. Yep. Is it sent me and it sent Denise a notification letting us know that this shipment was received. So this is a great example of aACE sending an automated notification. And the rule for when aACE does that, we touched it a little bit on this last week, is if something happened in the organization that you might not be aware of, because it's not part of like your view, aACE will send you a notification. So in this case, the person who writes a PO is not out in the warehouse monitoring the dock in hopes of having their shipment come in, right? So in this case, we send a notice. The user can click to the related record, review it, and we're gonna go ahead and use this button, this handy go to button, to jump to the related PO. We have I'm down here in Texas implementing the software for a customer, and this notice was like life-changing for a huge number of people there, because before they didn't have this. They couldn't rely on the people in the warehouse to tell them. They were literally leaving their desk, walking around the warehouse, looking for things to see if they had been received. Like, can you imagine? Guy told me that, and I'm like, oh my Lord. So this one notice that you just saw was life-changing for him.
Michael, before you do that, Kathy asked, Kathy had 2 questions or statements. She said, how did you get that notice when the notice has a 0 on it? And then she said, it just now showed up with the quantity of 1. You got it to pop up and it was showing a 0.
So this refreshes every minute. I know that it was here because it's attached to this shipment, right? I mean, I know because I'm a developer. I know that that's going to turn to 1 within a minute. In the real world, nobody notices or cares, right? Because the shipping guys, they enter it, a minute later, it shows up on someone's menu. They don't know to click that button early and that they'll see it. So that's all it is. That indicator refreshes every minute.
So it's a
good question.
Not a big deal in a real world workflow, but it might look a little funny right now.
No, you gotta be careful asking me questions because I'm so excited about all this stuff. A lot of what aACE does is built on schedules that are occurring behind the scenes. What we want is the client to be doing as little as possible. We want the server to be doing thinking. It makes for a much faster experience. So there are lots of activities in the software that take a minute to show up. But in the real world, when you have real users, different departments doing different things, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy responded and just said, Michael, you're just a super sleuth.
Thank you.
Over here.
Okay, I gotta go fast. Wow, 10:30. So let's take a look at this PO. Something super cool I want to point out. Look at this email. So going back to the conversation we just had, I did not give Kathy $20 to ask that question. I didn't show this to you earlier because it takes a few minutes for it to happen. But that email I sent is now attached to this PO. So now I'm gonna go ahead and view it as HTML because it looks a little nicer. There will never be a question about whether that email got sent because by virtue of it being here, it went out into the cloud, it hit an inbox, came back into the system, right? And then was attached to these various records.
So this is the Ultra Big Brother version, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Which comes included.
Oh, we're
so pretty cool. Let's look at the management view. We can see now that our received column is populated. It's worth noticing that if you fully received or fully purchased, you don't get the fractional value. You only get the fractional value if there's a partial value. And that's really handy when you have a PO with 50 lines, 60 lines, and you're looking for where things might remain, because that fractional value just really pops. But here we can see we received all 10 of 10. We have yet to purchase any of those 10. That related shipment, so each of these columns has additional detail. That related shipment is viewable here. So I can see the lines that we're expecting to receive. I can see the related shipments. I can get to the shipment with that go to button. I can get to the shipment, this go to button. And all these little action menus contain additional tools, which we'll review when we have a little more time. Let's go ahead and enter the vendor's invoice. I'm just going to press this plus button. So let's say that the vendor included the invoice with the shipment. That's not an unusual event at all. So let me go ahead and enter the number. Let's get the date. So again, save, pending. One guess what happens? Open prompt. This one contains a little bit of additional info. That balance indicator can actually be really quite helpful. For AP people, and we can expand on that a little bit when we conduct that webinar. I grabbed an example vendor invoice online just so I could demonstrate that. That's the PDF they sent me. I just dragged and dropped it onto this little icon. So now it's attached to the record, so anybody can view it, download it, whatever the case may be at a later date. All right, so let's look back at this PO. Okay, I did that. All right, I'm doing good. Reviewing the PO, management view. So we can see that this PO is fully received, fully purchased. All these numbers jive. So this PO auto closed itself. If we look at the logs, we can see a little bit of a story. Remember how empty that looked in the beginning? Now we can see a real story regarding what happened. Right? And we can see that this PO was auto-closed via this purchase, 6003. So open versus closed. The open status means there's some sort of balance remaining. There's some sort of activity that is expected in the future. Closed means nothing left to do. This PO is closed because it was fully received and we've entered the bill. The purchase, right, what we need to pay the vendor, that is open because there is activity expected. We need to pay this bill. So I'm just going to go ahead and push a disbursement through. Rarely would you create a disbursement for purchase using that tool. But let's say it's like, okay, you got to get, an ACH in the mail right now. An ACH in the mail. Got to process an ACH right now, get it to China so they ship the goods. So maybe you would do a one-of payment. Let me just go ahead and press save. Pending, yellow, ACE prompts us for the next step. When we get into accounting, we'll talk about pending versus posted. But with that event in place, this purchase is now closed because it's no longer payable, right? We paid it. So that's the pending, open, closed life cycle. Pending, we're writing it. Open, we're expecting things to happen. So a PO expects goods to be received or expects an invoice to be received from the vendor. A purchase expects to be paid, things of that sort. And then when those expectations have been met, the record auto closes. In the case of a PO or a sales order, sometimes you're going to have imbalances. So we talked earlier about commodities. You may order 100 and they may send you 95, or they may send you 105. So there may be an imbalance. If there's an imbalance, ACE doesn't auto close the record. because it doesn't know what that imbalance might imply. Like, do we have to return the extra ones? Do we owe them extra money? If they send us a short shipment, are they going to send us more? aACE can't divine those sorts of things. That's where humans add value. But if that PO is done, right, with that imbalance, someone can manually close the PO. And then what validations as far as which balances must match? A lot of those are preferences in the system, again, so that we can support different industries. Cool, I got through my agenda. It looks like we do have a question.
We do. What about enter something like a utility bill where you would not have POs?
Yeah, so you can always just go straight to the purchases module. And do we have in our demo data, do we have a utility company?
We have office place or office space, and I think that's it.
Okay. Oh, here's a new feature, right? You can attach notes to a vendor that will pop up, right, when a user enters a vendor. Not part of our plan for today, but a super cool feature. Let me just go ahead and enter some information here. But yeah, you can, this is for rent. Right, it could be electric, it could be trash removal, it could be anything. I'll just go ahead and enter it, pending. Now it's going to be open, and now we've got an AP balance. So yeah, the only thing you can't do this for inventoried goods. For inventory, aACE has a very sophisticated costing engine for inventory. It's one of the big problems our prospective customers have that they're looking to solve when they sign up with aACE software. Inventory is doing a lot of calculations based on here's how many we received, here's what we paid, was there also a freight invoice? So there's actually a lot of data that needs to be aggregated in order to get to the right inventory value. So inventory requires a purchase order, but rent, electric, anything that's not inventoried can be entered directly via the purchases module. So that was a great question. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions?
Giving just a long pause here to see if anybody has a question. Here we go. There's a comment. There's also a recurring purchase feature for things like rent.
That's a big topic.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Let's just touch on it real quick. So, and actually it's I introed today saying we want to teach you about transactions. We have a module called recurring transactions. Guess what it does? You can come in and set up all kinds of recurring transactions. So, rent, for example, you could have it auto created 10 days before it's due. You could even have it auto generate a check if that's how you pay and leave it pending from a certain bank account. If it gets automatically withdrawn from your bank account by ACH or some other means, you could set that up too. On the sales side of things, which we're going to review next week, you can set up payment plans. You can generate recurring orders. Corey Elliott's our director of sales, but he was a former customer. His company, he sold his company and became our first investor, and is now our director of sales. He owned a filtration company, right? And so you can imagine that a lot of their customers might be schools. They had recurring orders. Every 3 months we're going to send a new set of filters, right? So recurring transactions is really quite handy. And so yeah, it's worth repeating the disclaimer that we don't really want you manually writing transactions and entering transactions. If you notice, I only wrote that PO. The shipping, the purchase, pretty much everything else was there for me. Maybe I clicked a few buttons, but I didn't really have to do a lot of data entry. That's what we want. And you heard me earlier say, we don't even want you writing the PO. We want those to be auto-generated based on demand from sales orders or inventory replenishment, things like that. But yeah, the more data entry we can eliminate, the better. And the recurring transactions module is a great way to eliminate data entry for things like rent or electric or whatever the case may be. That's also where that pending status comes in, because you may get a bill every month, but it varies a little bit. So aACE can generate it with what it thinks is the right amount, leaves it pending, sends you a notice, you click back to it, you adjust it based on the actual value, and you push it through. It's all about limiting the work that a human needs to do to where a human actually adds value. If a human's not adding value, we want to automate it to the best of our ability. Thank you for that comment.
And while you were speaking, nothing else came through. So does anybody else have any questions for Michael today?
All right.
Crickets.
Well, hopefully that means I did a good job. We have a pretty good attendee list, which is exciting. So thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, so I guess with that, no more questions. That's all for today, but we hope to see you next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time when we continue our discovery track of webinars with sales orders. Michael will be here to walk us through sales orders as well. However, aACE has a big announcement with the release of aACE 6. aACE is now available in the browser. You heard me right. It's available in the browser. All of your remote employees or employees on the go can access aACE. Our developers have completed incredible work. Actually, close to 15,000 hours of expertise has gone into aACE 6 development. And that is going to be at your fingertips with aACE in the browser. The co-founder of aACE, Brian Sanchez, will be presenting next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That's Tuesday, March 14th at 11 a.m. You can sign up on the aACE website, and please join us. We are super excited. Brian is an engaging presenter, and it will certainly be worth your time. So join us on Tuesday if you can. And before we wrap up, I'd like to thank all of you for attending and for sharing your questions during the presentation. You will get a link to this recording so you can watch it again or share it with colleagues. If you think of any questions that we didn't cover, you can always reach out to us at sales@acesoft.com and we'll be happy to get you an answer. You can also sign up for future webinars like the ones next week at acesoft.com/webinars. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.